first one of the month. So this tends to go a little bit longer than usual, just because I have to explain quite a few things. But welcome everyone. Welcome to 6 Foot Wine Club. Welcome to the Argentina 1st of the January of 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, can't believe we are about to hit our 5-year mark, which is insane to think about. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we have quite a few rookies joining us this month. I started this wine club back in the thick of the pandemic, April of 2020. I was working in restaurants at the time. It's kind of a way to pivot to new reality, adjust and pivot to the new reality. And a lot of folks that you see on this screen right now have been with me since that kind of the beginning, or have joined shortly within the first year or two of that, and have been with me now. And once you've kind of been in the trenches together, so to speak, drinking a bottle of wine together every week for 4+ going on to almost 5th year, 5 years, we've kind of formed this tight community of people, which is great. So yeah, don't think of this as just like some wine club. We're just going to talk about wine. I mean, we are going to talk about wine. We are going to get pretty geeky. We are going to get pretty nerdy. But it's more than that. I think that's what kind of sets 6 Foot Wine Club apart. There's definitely a community of people here. Don't be shy. Ask away. Participate and be part of this community of weirdos that enjoy wine together. So here we are. Anyways, in case you're wondering, my name is Woong Chang. That's spelled right there on the screen, W-O-O-N-G, but it's pronounced like in authentically speaking or pronouncing in Korean is but that silent W throws everybody off, so don't feel bad about it. But over the years of people butchering my name, that G has also become progressively silent. So like moon without the M, or like spoon without the SP, or I respond to both. So whatever is easier for you. Yeah, you can address me by that name. Just 2 ground rules here at 6 Foot Wine Club. One is, so the first hour, just kind of like 8:30 to 9:30 is the quote unquote regular programming. So that's when I'm going to go through kind of the place where the wine comes from. This is where we get a little geeky and nerdy. We're going to do the producer profile. We're going to taste the wine through the grid. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain what that means when we get there. So we're going to do all of that in the first hour. And then after that, this kind of turns into the after hour, which is kind of like the virtual wine club, where, we just got to hang out and, update each other on each other's lives. We have folks joining from different parts of the country. We have some from California, some from Texas, some from New York. That's all I see right now on the screen. But yeah, so we got people from different places. Florida, I see. So yeah, we got people joining from different places. So yeah, we all got to hang out. And the best part is when you're done, ready to go home, you can just click off and go home because you're already home. So yeah, that's the best part. So during that first regular hours, however, I ask that if you have any questions, put it in the chat box, or just wait until you're prompted for questions, just so that we can keep this moving. So that's the first ground rule. And then second ground rule is, we're all adults here with various different backgrounds, and we're all consuming booze and hanging out and talking about, our daily lives and whatnot. And sometimes there may be some things that are said, or you may say something that may offend people, or you may hear something that offend you. And, those are all natural. I want you to show authentically yourself. But in the interest of keeping this space feeling safe and fun for everyone, when those things are brought to my attention, we're going to address that as a group. As a group, we're going to talk about it. That's not coming from a place of scolding you or trying to censor you. It's coming from a place of love and respect. Again, just want to make sure that this place feels safe and fun for everyone. So when those things are brought up, we're just going to talk about it as a group. So just know that, but don't be afraid. Like, don't be shy. Don't think you're going to have to censor your speech or anything like that. I swear, I use profanity. I make tons of inappropriate jokes here. So go ahead, be part of the problem. Okay, so a few announcements before we get into the wine. For those of you who signed up for Boge Box, the first recording is going to go out this Friday. So, most of you on this call have subscribed to Box, and you know the drill. You've done this many years. This is the fifth iteration of doing Box. So the recordings will go out every fourth week. We're going to do a live call. So every fourth week, if you join monthly box as well, you're going to essentially have 2 tastings. You get this phase twice a week. You know, good for you. You're welcome. But yeah, so you know the drill. So that first recording is going to go out on Friday. Tomorrow, I'm going to send out a mass email to everybody who joined Box this year. So look out for that. Also tomorrow, Case Club is going to open, and then this being the January first month of the year, it's going to be big. It's going to be a little different because we do hits from the past. So all the wines that you guys had sent over, asking, you know, all the wines from last year, 2024, as well as the years before. I have reached out to all my importers, make sure the inventory is good to go. Some of what vintages have changed, some of what pricing has changed, but anything is available. I'm going to put that all in the Case Club. So there's quite a bit here that's going up this year. There's going to be like 40 wines that are going to be going up on that Case Club. So it's going to be a big one. So look out for that email. That will also go out tomorrow. That will open up. For those of you who are joining for the first time, Case Club is this kind of like a perk program that we do at the beginning of each month. So essentially, it's your opportunity to purchase all the wines that you've tasted from the previous month at or near wholesale price. Essentially, the idea is the more you buy, cheaper it becomes per bottle. Is the kind of idea behind it. I know for you rookies, you haven't tasted any of the wines from last month, which were all sparkling wines. It's like a New Year's Eve sparkler box is what I did last month. So if you're more than welcome to participate, there will be wines from that I featured in all 2024, 2023, 2022. There's some I was really impressed. Some of you requested some wines that we tasted back in like 2021. I don't even know how you remember those wines, but good for you. I'm impressed. So all those will go up. You're more than welcome to participate if you like. But yeah, that will be happening tomorrow. Besides that, I don't really have any other announcement except for, last but not least, 6 Foot Wine Club is committed to donating 1% of its gross revenue to an organization whose mission statement aligns with our values, my values. And this month, I have chosen Washington Youth Garden. If you want to learn more about what they do, or you want to donate alongside 6 Foot Wine Club, I have dropped the link in the chat box. Go check it out. If not, no worries, but just want to give you an opportunity. Any questions about anything that I just went over before I delve into the wine? No? Okay. Hearing none, let's get into the wine. Also, all these recordings are being recorded, just so you know. If you do miss any weeks, it will be made available on the recording. You should be shared on the Google Drive with the recording, like a Google Sheet with all the recordings there, so you can go back anytime. But yeah, so know that the recording is for that reason, not to put you on record. So for that reason. All right, so hearing none, let's get into the wine. We're starting off with this guy. 2024 El Porvenir Amauta Valle de Cafayate Torrontes is what we're tasting today. So welcome to the Argentina month. So I've been thinking about putting together Argentina month. We did kind of like a south of the border box a couple of years back, but it was mostly Chilean. We had one Argentinian Malbec in there, but the rest of 3 were all Chilean wines. So this time I wanted to dedicate the full box to Argentina because it's a really, really fascinating place. Not only in terms of terroir, meaning like the place and, you know, the soil, the climate, the elevation, the aspect and all of that, but also it's a place of incredible immigration history. Kind of like US, Argentina is a country that's founded upon immigration. And every kind of nationalities that have kind of come to Argentina has left their kind of mark in the viticulture history there. So really cool stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. But, you know, we've kind of come to expect Argentina as this, like, you know, Malbec land. In fact, most people don't know there's anything else besides Malbec that comes from Argentina. But the truth is there's incredible diversity there because of the immigration history, because of the Spanish missionary history. So yeah, my goal, my aim this month was kind of highlight and showcase some different side of Argentina rather than focusing just on Malbec. Because quite frankly, you can find Malbec anywhere, everywhere. Go to any market, go to any wine store, you'll be able to pick up a bottle of Malbec, Mendoza Malbec from Argentina. So I thought that'd be kind of boring if I went Malbec. So I'm gonna let you guys figure that out on your own, but I'm gonna try to showcase some other things from Argentina. Some of them may shock you. It did shock me for sure. So yeah. Anyways, let's start with a map because that's what we always do. That's just kind of how I categorize information in my own head, as well as I think is an excellent way to talk about wine. So here we are. Here's a map of Argentina. For those of you, I know we're all Americans and we all suck at geography. And I know a lot of you are DC people, very smart and very geographically, adapt people. But, in case you didn't know where Argentina was, we're in the tip of South America. So, we're in North America. If you take that land all the way down to the tip, you can kind of see it here at the end. So this is South America, right? This is Brazil up here, right? And then this is Argentina. On the eastern side, on the left, west of Argentina is Chile. So essentially, if you look at this map, this is Andes, the mountain that goes down to the back, and that's essentially what divides Chile and Argentina. So last time we talked a lot about Chile, but this time we're going to talk about Argentina. And I'm sorry, the only map that I could get off of the internet, it was kind of cut off from the top. But yeah, so this is kind of the winemaking regions of Argentina. Argentina is a significant player in the global wine market. It is actually the 5th largest wine producer globally, which is pretty big. But over 60% of its production comes from the Mendoza region. Just to give you an idea how popular Malbec is. When you talk about Mendoza, which is right here. By the way, Buenos Aires is right here in the east. So we're talking about going towards Chile, right up against the foothills of the Andes, which is where all the wine regions are in Argentina. But Mendoza is probably the most well-known one because that's where the most amount of Malbec is planted. So yeah, 60% of the Argentinian wine production comes from Mendoza, and 90% of that is Malbec, just to give you an idea of how much Malbec is made in Argentina. Argentina kind of like bet their farm on essentially on Malbec, and it hugely paid off. It's essentially that's kind of what they came to be known as. But again, we're gonna try to see some different things. This land is really defined in extremes. I mean, the longest continental mountain, the Andes, exists right here. The longest continental mountain chain in the world. As well as the driest place on earth, which is up in Salta, which is where we are this week. The fruit for this particular wine comes from Valle de Cafayate, which means Cafayate Valley, which is right here. I know it's a very poor resolution, but this is where we are on the very northern kind of a wine region of Argentina. Some of the driest places on earth. All the deserts up here has some of the lowest rainfalls in the entire world, as well as the longest coastlines on the left along Chile, glacier plains on the south by the Patagonia down here. So really, really extreme landscape. So imagine growing grapes ranging from going all the way down to Patagonia. So remember, this is also a southern hemisphere. So as you go more north, you get closer to the equator, which means it gets warmer. Right here in the northern hemisphere, more north you go, colder it gets. But here, the more south you go, warmer it gets. But obviously, at one point, you're getting closer to the South Pole, so it starts getting colder. So in fact, when you come down to Patagonia, it is noticeably cooler than this central region, which is Mendoza, San Juan, La Rioja, this area. San Juan, by the way, is the second most probably significant region out of all of Argentina. Second after the Mendoza in terms of both the quantity of a wine that's being produced. And I'm going to break this down to kind of region by region more next week. I wanted to kind of give you more of like overall overview of Argentina this week. But yeah, so in case you were thinking like, I would love to learn more about each region, we're going to get into that next week. But just know that Mendoza is probably the most significant player. It gets warmer. It is the warmest here right in the center, and that's why you get this big, massive, really ripe, extracted style Malbec that you find because it's really hot, kind of like Napa Valley, so to speak. And then as you go north, it gets high up in the mountains. So some of the highest vineyard sites in the world exist also in Argentina, particularly in Salta, where especially around Cafayate, which is where we are this week. So we're talking about really, really high elevation site wines. Just in general, Argentina, when you look at it, this is kind of what it looks like, just kind of give you an idea. So this is Chile on the west. If you kind of took a cross section, you've cut that land across. And if you looked at it on the left, this is Chile. So all the kind of like the rain and the clouds and everything that comes in from the Pacific Ocean basically gets hit by the Andes, gets blocked. So on the left, on Chilean side, depend on where you are, obviously, but in general, it just gets more precipitation. There's a little more maritime influence. It's just not as extreme. There's a lot of a Humboldt current, which is a really cool air current that comes in off the ocean, Pacific Oceans, that cools it down. But just overall kind of elevation-wise, as you can see here, even Mendoza, right in the valley, the hottest part of Argentina, is already at 2,500 feet. Above sea level, which is already way higher than most of like a coastal area of Chile. And then it goes up and up. Uco Valley, which is within Mendoza, gets up to 5,000 feet on average. Here we go. Salta gets up to 1,000 feet. So we're talking about very, very high elevation wines. And why does that matter? So when the wine gets up into the mountains, I mean, like I mentioned, this is really, really dry area, really desert-like. It gets really, really hot during the day, gets a lot of sunlight. So it has no problem ripening the grapes. But because there's a huge elevation that takes it all the way up, it cools it off quite a bit. So at the end, it keeps the night temperature really low. In fact, I'm about to drop a really geeky word or terminology called diurnal shift. You're going to hear that quite a bit if you hang around with a bunch of wine nerds. It's basically the temperature difference between daytime and nighttime. And the bigger the diurnal shift is, the better it is for grape growing. Or the temperature difference here is quite extreme. So even in the summer days up in Salta, particularly in Cafayate, which is some of the highest vineyard sites in all of Argentina, the summer day temperature hovers around just below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so quite hot. But the nighttime drops all the way down to 50 degrees. So we're talking about almost 50-degree difference between day and nighttime. So imagine during the daytime, all that heat, all that sunlight, just helping ripen the fruit, developing sugar, developing flavor. But at nighttime, it cools the grape berries way down. But what it does, it extends the growing season. It extends the hang time of the fruit, the berries on the vines. And then when that happens, the berries just develop more flavor, more complexity, more concentration. And then at nighttime, by cooling it off, all the natural acidity is retained. So now you have this fruit that wine essentially that has all these flavors and complexity and the ripeness and then alcohol development without lacking any of the freshness, kind of brightness, and then vivid, kind of like a liveliness of the wine. And that's exactly what you want. A lot of basically best places, quote unquote, best places in the world for viticulture have this common thread running through. And one of them is this diurnal shift, which is that whenever there's a huge difference between daytime and nighttime, it tends to create really delicious wines because we all want freshness, but we also want flavors. And that's what you get right here in Salta because of that. So imagine, like I said, this is Southern Hemisphere. So more north you go, you're actually getting closer to the equator. So you're getting pretty warm. So you're getting a site that is made possible, viticulture that's made possible by this high elevation and this elevation, the coolness that's brought here. Just to give you some history of Argentina and the viticulture here. Viticulture was brought here by, so I'll break it up. Oh, there you go. Viticulture was brought to South America with the Spanish missionaries at the beginning of the 16th century. One early example, and this is actually exists in Chile. We've tasted Pais from Chile. We've also had mission grapes from California. These are all the same grapes. Basically, these are what we now know as a Listan Prieto, which comes from Canary Islands. These are the grapes that were first brought by the Spanish missionaries into the Americas. That includes California, that includes Mexico, that includes all the way down to Chile and Argentina. So that's kind of like how we started. The very first grapes that were planted for vinification was the beginning of 16th century with these mission grapes. But the wine industry in Argentina that we know of it now didn't really take shape until they gained independence in the early 19th century from Spain. And there was this kind of massive migration. At the beginning of today, I mentioned that Argentina shares kind of similar history as US in terms of that it was a country that was founded upon immigration. So there's this huge influx of mass immigration that happened at the beginning of the 9th century, right after they gained independence from Europe. So in the second half of the 19th century, they received a lot of Italians. In fact, I used to live in Argentina. I lived in Buenos Aires for about 8 months in 2008. To this day, until the last day I left Buenos Aires, if I wasn't like paying super close attention to what they were saying, I thought they were speaking Italian, just because the accent and everything there is just so very Italian. So huge Italian influence, but also a lot of Spanish, particularly the Spanish from the Basque and the Catalan region also came, as well as the Swiss, all came to Argentina. And they planted vineyards in the foothills of the Andes. Basically, all the kind of the regions that we know you saw on that map were planted by a lot of these immigrants. But they particularly planted around the cities of Mendoza and San Juan, and that's why it developed as kind of the epicenter of the Argentina viticulture. Initially, the consumption, all the wine consumption was hugely local. It's really for the people and the immigrants that moved to that region and planted vineyards. But with the opening of Buenos Aires Pacifico Railway that connected Mendoza with Buenos Aires in 1885, and then a year later, San Juan was also connected in the same railway. The much larger kind of markets, Buenos Aires market, and essentially the rest of the world opened up. So export started becoming a huge kind of a driver of the wine market for Argentina. This is also when the industry kind of decided to turn their attention to a lot of French varieties. So particularly the Bordeaux varieties became very widespread. So for those of you if you're not familiar, Bordeaux varieties are essentially Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. So those 5 varieties really took hold in Argentina, particularly, I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot is still grown there quite a bit, but the Malbec really took off. But also know that Malbec is originally from southwest of France, from a place called Cahors. It's called Côte there. But the clone that they use in Argentina, so the parent species is the same, it's all Malbec Côte. But the actual clone, the clonal choice that they made in Argentina is slightly different. So it's less kind of rustic and tannic, it's much more velvety and round. So when people say Malbec and Côte are exactly the same thing, they're kind of right and wrong. So they're both right in that it is both the same grape, same species, belongs to the same family, but the clonal selection is a little bit different. Again, probably a very much of useless information unless you ever play a wine trivia game and never comes up. There you go. Now you can tell somebody that Argentinian Malbec is actually a different clonal selection than Cahors Malbec Côte. So yeah, so all the Bordeaux varieties became really widespread after the Argentinian wine market opened up to the world, the export world, because at the time in the 1800s, Bordeaux was really popular. That's kind of what everybody wanted to drink. So they were essentially trying to figure out how to make those varieties work in this new place called Argentina that had this incredibly beautiful and amazing landscape and place for growing grapes. And to this day, that's what exactly essentially dominates the industry. So anytime if you ever go to a wine store, even now, or particularly a grocery store, if you look at an Argentina section, first of all, it would be mostly all Malbec. And probably after that, it would probably be Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. It'd be pretty much all Bordeaux varieties with some smidgens of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc possibly. thrown in for whites, maybe some Torrontes. But again, very much French variety driven kind of a wine region that it has become. However, like I mentioned, my aim this month is kind of showcase some of these kind of a different style, different things, showcase some of this immigration history, as well as some of the unknown, lesser popular kind of native variety. So this week, we're going to start with the Torrontes, which is what we're tasting this week. Next week, there's this kind of a burgeoning variety. It is a French variety, Pinot Noir, everybody knows, but it is kind of a burgeoning variety. It's starting to really take shape. There's a beautiful, beautiful Pinot Noir that's being made in Argentina right now, particularly in the Patagonia, going much more south where it gets a little bit cooler than Mendoza. But I could not find still Pinot Noir. That's what I really wanted, but I couldn't find one. So we have Pinot Noir Sparkling Rosé instead in the second week. And then the third and fourth week, we're going to kind of dedicate to these kind of minority varieties that were introduced by these early immigrants. So the first one would be Becquignol, which is, again, what the fuck is Becquignol? I've never heard of that grape until I taste this wine, but it's delicious. French variety that people believe is has some origin in Jura region of France. Again, very alpine, mountain region, so it makes sense why it would grow in the alpine, very high elevation sites in Argentina. And Bonarda and Barbera. Again, Italian immigrants coming in, bringing some of their Italian varieties as well. So we're going to taste that in the third and fourth week. So that's kind of the whole idea of this month, which is kind of showcase some of that. Let's see. I mentioned that we're in Salta, we're in Cafayate Valley, fantastic growing condition there. Mentioned all those things, slows down the hang time, diurnal shift is what makes it great. Extreme elevation, cool nights. So yeah, let's talk about who makes this wine. By the way, if you guys ever go there, if you guys ever get a chance to drive from Mendoza to Chile, going over the Aconcagua Peak, it doesn't go all the way up to Aconcagua Peak, but there's this like really, really crazy switchbacks that buses will take you up there and go drop you off on the other side. It is worth doing that drive. It's incredible. But yeah, there you go. This is the lady. By the way, I'm just gonna say this now. I mean, in case you've never been to Argentina, Argentinian people are beautiful. They're just beautiful. They just won the genetic lottery. Like I've never felt so ugly as a human being as when I lived there for 8 months. I'm like, these people have just like won the genetic lottery. And every month this week, every week this month, whenever I'm like pulling the producer profile, I'm like, God damn it, these people are beautiful. Like, what is happening? But anyways, this is her. So El Porvenir is the producer of this wine. It's founded by Roberto Romero Marcuzzi. Again, very Italian sounding last name, going back to the Italian immigrant history. In 2000, and it has been run by, and now it's run by this lady, Lucia Romero Marcuzzi, the granddaughter of Roberto, and she's been running the family estate since 2013. She grew up amongst the vines with her grandfather and her dad. Her grandfather and her dad owned a different winery than El Porvenir in Salta in the 80s. And as she got older, she got her MBA, a wine MBA in Argentina, and then now she oversees the kind of the operations, day-to-day operations of the family winery. The first winery was founded in the late 1970s, just a few miles from Cafayate. That's the winery that grandfather and the dad founded. But now, with the El Porvenir, they own and farm 4 different vineyards, all located near the town of Cafayate. The oldest planted or approximately 65 years ago, which is pretty amazing. So this Torrontes, there's some 50-year-old Torronte vines that went in there for something that Torrontes usually is never like this, age-worthy. It's not something you hold on to for a long time. It's meant for much more of like an immediate, youthful kind of consumption. The fact that they have 50-year-old Torrontes and that they're putting into their very kind of like, everyday drinking Torrontes, it just kind of gives you an idea or insight into how quality driven they are or quality focused they are. And then they're trying to really showcase what this native variety Torrontes can do. Um, Pretty much all grown in sandy soil. I mean, Salta in general is very much all sandy soil. It's desert. So sandy soil ranging from 5,400 to 6,200 feet above sea level. So again, pretty high, high elevation sites. The winery is currently in the process of being certified organic and sustainable. And Lucia has started initiatives. She's kind of a leader. By the way, a lot of wine industry and as you globally speaking, anywhere you go in the wine world, is pretty much of a like an old boys club. It's very much a man-driven world. But she's kind of looked at as particularly in Salta, which is a very classic, very kind of a conservative area of Argentina. She's kind of looked at as a kind of a leader, as a woman winemaker there. Or she doesn't make the wine, but she runs the winery, and she makes the effort to kind of bring up a lot of women winemakers and women leadership in the winemaking in Argentina. So she started initiative to inclusion of women in the vineyard work, with scholarships for students in the community and support for transgender people in her own winery. So very progressive, very forward-thinking lady that runs a family winery. This is actually the vineyard site. This is obviously a different black grape they're picking, but this is actually one of the vineyard sites that they farm. So this is kind of like what it looks like. Just in the back, very mountainous back. And this is what Torrontes looks like. Let's talk about Torrontes actually for a second while you have it. So in case you have already started tasting it, by the way, you should have. You don't have to wait until we get to the grid for you to start tasting it. Start drinking the wine. It's all good. It's very floral, right? It's super aromatic. It gives off a lot of these kind of like, if you're familiar with the Muscat grape, it gives off a lot of that muscatty kind of aromas. And you'll be right, because this is the offspring of Muscat of Alexandria and Criollo Chica, which is the mission grape, the Listan Prieto that I mentioned. So this is a cross between white grape and a black grape. But here we are as an offspring, shows off more as a kind of a white grape. But yeah, a lot of that kind of aroma profile of Muscat remained in this hybrid. And that's what we have, Torrontes. It is grown in other parts. It is grown in Chile. I have seen some of it actually grown in California as well. But really, when you're talking about Torrontes, we're talking about Argentina. There's no other place in the world that grows as much Torrontes as Argentina. Particularly here, Salta is kind of the home of Torrontes. And in general, if you ever get Torrontes from a warmer part like Mendoza or San Juan, which there are a lot of in the market, if you ever find a bottle of Torrontes in a like grocery store or like a corner liquor store, most likely it comes from a warmer place. And I have never, ever really liked Torrontes for that reason, because a lot of what I come across is from that region, from the warmer places, and it is just so soapy, so aromatic. It's like drinking a bottle of perfume. And I'm not a huge floral wine person. And on top of that, because it's warm, it just does, and Torrontes in general does not have really high acidity, just natural acidity. So coupled with all of that, it just ends up being like a wine that like I'm drinking some potpourri, like a grandma's potpourri, and I've never enjoyed it until I came across Salta Torrontes. And this particular bottle really sank to me, because again, this is a difference. This is what happens when you grow things on the high elevation site that it comes from. We mentioned this comes from 6,500 feet above sea level, very high place. So it gets quite cold, down to the 50s, even in nighttime, summer nighttime. So all that acidity. This is probably the most amount of acidity I've ever tasted on Torrontes in any bottling of Torrontes I've ever had. It was quite actually striking to me how balanced the aromatics were. Yes, it's still floral. Yes, it's still aromatic. If you don't like aromatic floral wines, this will probably won't be your favorite. Like me, I'm not a huge floral aromatic wine guy, but I can get down with this. To me, this is actually delicious. It drinks well. It keeps its acidity, and that's why I put it in there. I just want to show that even the old kind of almost commercial commodity-driven wines like Torrontes, it can be made well in the right hands. in the right place. And then that's what I'm trying to showcase here by going to self-tap. So Offshaker Muscat and Criollo Chica, very aromatic, often lacks acidity, but this is not it. So this particular wine is 100% sustainably grown Torrontes, grown on sandy soil, like I mentioned, at 5740 feet altitude. It is a very simple winemaking. It's kind of what you would expect. It's complete destemmed. So as soon as the berries arrive, they strip all the berries off of the stems, discard the stems, and just the berries. They crush it, and then put it straight into stainless steel tank. They take it off the skin right away, put it in stainless steel tank. They ferment it for about 21 days, and then they bottle it and they push it out. This is not a quote unquote natural wine. And I explain what that means. Sorry, I feel like I'm coming down with something. My voice is doing good things. So you might have heard, especially for those you rookies, you might have heard this term natural wine. And if you're not familiar with it, don't worry, there's no definition of what natural wine means. Nobody can agree on what natural wine means. I've even kind of moved away from using that word, quote unquote, natural wine. I prefer kind of minimal interventionist wines these days, the term at least. And then what it means is that it's at least sustainably or organically grown. So chemical-free farming, the way I define natural wine is chemical-free farming in the vineyards. And then once you get to the cellar, there's no addition and no subtraction except for the minute amount of sulfites or gross filtering. So what that means is that there's no adding of anything. In conventional wine world, you add everything. You pitch yeast, you find a strain of lab-grown yeast, and you add it to the wine must to start fermenting it. And then in the most egregious cases, you will see the series of additives that get added. Things like, now that you need to add yeast nutrients because the yeast strain that you put in is not strong enough to start, finish the fermentation. So you need to feed the yeast strains. And after that, maybe color is not quite right. So now you add color, like the mega purple. And then after that, you don't like that the wine doesn't have enough acid because it grew in a very hot place, or you hung the grapes too long. So you add citric acid to bump up the acid level. Or the other way, it's too acidic and then it doesn't have enough flavor. It doesn't have enough sugar development to get to the alcohol level you want. So now you can add sugar to it, actual like a table sugar to the wine must to jack up the alcohol percentage. Or you can chemically de-acidify the wine because it's too tart. So all these things, all this manipulation usually happens in the wine world. And when I say usually, I'm talking about 90% of the wines that we drink in the world are made this way. And then there's a very small percentage of people that are doing it very old traditional way before all this manipulation started happening in the wine world, where it's basically you leave the grapes the fuck alone. And as long as you put up the guardrails and make sure they don't fall apart into basically become vinegar, they want to ferment. They want to become wine. Fruits, if you left alone, if you crush it because of a natural yeast that's found in the skins, they will ferment and they will turn into wine. Obviously, it's much simpler than what I'm describing. There's a lot of chemistry that happens, a lot of know-hows, and a lot of nuances and different kind of tricks that winemakers have to deploy to make sure the wine doesn't fall apart. But in general, there are a group of winemakers that really have this philosophical approach to wine, whereas I try to do as little as possible for wine to turn into it. So they don't add anything, they don't subtract anything, they don't pitch anything. So it's just like a native yeast. You may hear this term quite a bit: spontaneous fermentation, native fermentation. All that means is that the yeast that's found on the skins, or the actual fruit of the grape, is what's used to ferment the wine and nothing else. This wine, there's pitched yeast. They actually found yeast, they actually purchased yeast and then they pitched it to the wine. Actually, I don't know if they purchased it. They could have actually grown it within their own lab with the yeast strain that's found on their vineyards. Some people do that, but that I do not know. But I do know that they pitched yeast in this wine. So in my definition of natural wine, it's not quote unquote natural wine. But again, I know that anything outside of that, she doesn't add anything else in this wine. It does receive a little bit of filtration at the end, just a little cartridge filtration, essentially like a paper filtration. Um, so some of that does get basically removed. There's some subtraction there. But I'm not super dogmatic about this stuff. What I really appreciate about this winery is that they're really transparent about it. And that's really what I'm after. At the end of the day, I don't care if you drink conventional wine, if that's your palate and that's what it does for you, drink what you want, but just know what's going in your wine and knowing what goes into your body. And to me, the fact that this is not a quote unquote natural wine yet, but they're very transparent about what they do, and I can appreciate that. I can respect that. So, and quite frankly, I think this wine is delicious. So I picked it even though it's not a quote unquote natural wine. So don't hate me because I'm serving you non-natural wine. All right. But this is all stainless steel tank fermented for 21 days. This is not a natural wine, peach cheese, and it also gets a little bit of filtration at the end with a touch of sulfites at Valle. Is basically what this wine is. Any questions about anything I just went over before we get into tasting the wine?
Yeah, I do.
What's up, Mayo?
It was from earlier and I just forgot to put it in the chat. Can you talk a little bit more about what that word was about the temperature difference from day and night? Like, is there a certain degree amount that makes the changes, or like what about it? Just, I guess, just more about it.
Yeah, so the phrase I was talking about is a diurnal shift. I'll put it in the chat box. Diurnal shift is just a geeky phrase to describe the temperature difference between daytime and nighttime. And the common kind of a thing, common thread that runs through the quote unquote best wine regions in the world is that diurnal shift is quite big in all the great places where wines are made. And again, what it does is that all that warmth, all that sunlight during daytime helps ripen the grape, ripen the berries. So it develops flavor, it concentrates the flavors, and adds complexity essentially to the final wine that's made from there. But so yeah, that's what the heat does. That's why the warmth and the sunlight is important during the daytime. But what's also important at nighttime, by cooling down the temperature, is that all the berries it slows down the ripening at nighttime. So now the berries can hang on the vines longer. And it's kind of like if you ever bought tomatoes that were taken off the vines and ripened on its own versus tomatoes that were actually ripened all the way through on the vine, they taste very, very different. And it's the exact same thing with the grapes. The longer that they hang on the vines, it just develops more flavor. So I've talked about this. So there are like, 3 different ripeness that as a winemaker is constantly monitoring, right? There's a sugar ripeness, which is the amount of sugar that's being developed in the berries, right? There's a phenolic ripeness, which is you're looking at all the phenolic kind of compounds. So we're talking about stems, we're talking about seeds, we're talking about skins. So not necessarily like the sugar, the fruit part, but the kind of vegetable part of the vine. The ripeness of that is also important because if those don't ripen fully, or if they're unripe, then it can often lead to these kind of like herbaceous, unripe, green, that kind of flavor, especially if it's a whole stem, like a stem inclusion fermentation situation that's happening, and the stems are not, not ripe. It's not lignified, which is where they start to turn into like the actual wood instead of that green stem. It can get really kind of herbaceous and green. And then finally, the flavor development, which is just where the compounds like terpenes, these are what's responsible for like the smells, the aromatics, which is 80% of what we taste. So that kind of ripeness, those all develop at different rate, and particularly sugar has an inverse proportional ratio to acid. So basically, as the fruit ripens, it gets sweeter and sweeter, the acid drops. And then at some point, as you're watching this, right, as a winemaker, you are trying to pick the optimal time to pick grapes that has all the flavors and the sugar that you want, but also you want the acid to keep it fresh, but you're also watching phenolic ripeness, you're also watching flavor ripeness. So you're constantly tasting, you're constantly looking at the sugar content and all of that. And basically all that ripeness can only happen if there's heat and there's sun. Sun is a big thing, but heat also helps. But by having the nighttime, the shift, the nighttime cooling you get to retain the natural acidity, which means the wine will be fresh, wine will be lively. It's not just flabby, big, like, high alcohol, punch you in the face with nothing, no freshness left. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I love getting oh, sorry. I love getting into those. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Then let's taste one. What am I doing? All right, rookies. You've come to the portion of the night that we taste the wine. This, oh, sorry, where did it go? Shoot. There you go. This is the grid. So we taste the wine through the grid. Oh shit, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm losing it. Here you go. This is a grid. This is just a deductive, systematic way of tasting wine. This is the way all the wine professionals, soms, wine critics, if you go through WCT, Wine Spirit Education Trust, that's what this stands for, or Court of Master Sommeliers. So WCT is a prerequisite for basically getting into Master of Wine program, MW. And then there's a Court of Master Sommeliers who certify Master Sommeliers, MSs. So those two are like the pinnacles of the wine certification, certifications in the wine world. And then they both have blind tasting as part of their training and an exam. And this grid is trying to help you kind of taste the wine deductively, so you can, at the end of it, you can get to it and call the vintage, the variety, the where it's from, what the wine is, how old it is, and all of that. In this case, we are using WCT level 3 grid. By the way, this is all available for free. If you want to copy for yourself, you can just go Google it, WCT grid, level 3, level 2, level 4, or Court of Master Sommeliers grid. Is very similar. So they got their little things that are a little bit different, but it's very, very similar. But yeah, you can get yourself a copy. But having said that, so we use the grid to taste the wine. It's a really good way to kind of conform the language, our lexicon around describing what's essentially a very subjective experience, which is tasting wine. So I see the value in it. I see why it would be helpful, and kind of fun too. Taste it. You guys you're tasting with me, who's been through this process and have been doing it for many, many years. So kind of somebody who's kind of trained in it and trying to like compare your palate against mine and see if you get the similar thing, similar call, if you get the call right or wrong. I understand how that's all fun. Having said that, don't live or die by the grid. This is very, very limiting. I find the descriptions here tend to be very biased. WCT is a British organization, so is Court of Master Sommeliers. So if you grew up in England or in Western Europe, you're probably very well familiar with these fruits and aromas that are here. That's fine. But there's nothing in here that describes flavors and aromas from, let's say, if you grew up in Amazon, in jungle, in Brazil, or in Philippines, or I don't know, in Ghana or Senegal, right? Like there's very different aromas and flavors that we all grew up with, depending on where you're from, but none of that is represented here. So whatever your background may be, whatever you smell in the wine, don't be afraid to call it out. It is your wine. It is your experience. Whatever you smell, call it out. Whatever you taste, call it out. You're not wrong. It's just that you may not be right for WCT grid, but that doesn't mean that you are wrong. And also just, I talked about natural wines for a second. One of the reasons I also love natural wine is that because of that kind of fermentation process where it's less control, less predictable results, sometimes it goes in directions that are very, very different than what conventional wines taste and smell like. And this grid is most definitely designed and made to taste conventional wines. So Some of the wines that we come across, sometimes it gets a little bit harder to taste, and again, very limiting. But again, and then there are a lot of, personally for me, I get a lot of descriptors that don't belong here. But again, you're not wrong. Just call it out if you see it. So again, don't live or die by the script. Use it as a very loose guideline. But here at Six Foot Wine Club, we taste wine through the grid. So here we are. Let's get started. I'll guide you through. This is the first week, so I'll guide you through each section and explain kind of what it means. But starting next week, we are actually gonna, each person, somebody is gonna take one section, and then we're gonna rotate around. So you get practice of actually doing this moving forward. All right, so appearance. Pour yourself like a half a glass of wine, like 2 to 3 ounces of wine. Oh, by the way, so let me explain this real quick. So it's divided into 4 different sections. First section is appearance, what the wine looks like. Second section is nose, what the wine smells like. Third section is a palate, what the wine tastes like. But you're tasting for 2 different things, both structure as well as flavor. So flavor is actually, these words right here, all these like fruits and flowers and different things that you actually taste. But the structure is basically anything but flavor. So we're talking about sugar level, acidity, tannin level, alcohol, body, things like that. So you're tasting for both things. But this is essentially what happens in the mouth with the wine. And then finally, conclusion is when you put all that sensory information that you've gathered about the wine, put them all together, think about it, and then you reach a conclusion. With the diversity 3 grid, level 3 grid, we're going to call out the quality level. We're less interested in calling out like the vintage, variety or where the wine is from, because one, we already know what we're drinking or what you're tasting. But we're going to use all that information to call out quality level, how good the wine is, and whether the wine should be aged or there's a potential for aging. So, all right, I'll start from the top. Appearance. So pour yourself half a glass of wine, 2 to 3 ounces, and then you're going to tilt it at like a 45-degree angle. This. And then you're going to look through the deepest core from the top to bottom. Natural light is the best, but obviously we're doing this tasting at night, so do your best. If you have like a white piece of paper, that's great to put it in the back. If not, you can use your palm of your hand in the back. So you kind of look at it, and then you call out the clarity. Is this wine clear or hazy? I'll say this wine is very clear. In fact, it is like almost like star bright. There's like a light reflection, light surface like reflecting off. So yeah, this is very translucent, very clear, star bright. Intensity of color, I'm gonna call this about, my lighting is not the best in here, but I'm gonna call this about, I don't know, pale lemon is about what I would call this. There's not a whole lot of color in here, maybe like medium minus, if I want to call that. But yeah, actually I'm gonna call it with pale. So I'm gonna call this pale lemon. And then you make any other observations here. All right, all the vets are going to roll their eyes because they've heard me say this so many times, but I'm going to get a soapbox for a second. Legs or tears is essentially when you swirl the wine and when you let the wines kind of drip on the side of the glass, you can see these kind of droplets coming down. Those are called legs or tears. It tells you essentially what the viscosity of the wine is. Slower that leg is, more viscous the wine is. It's a function of sugar and alcohol, right? More sugar there is, more thick, more viscous it becomes, more alcohol, potential alcohol, which means this also becomes viscous. But at the end, when we get to palate, we actually taste and verify the sweetness and we verify the alcohol. So I see no point in why we talk about legs or tears, like why they want us to make a note on legs or tears, but they do. But I usually don't pay much attention to legs or tears. 2, I've heard this in my 15 plus years of working on restaurant floor selling wine. Many people talk about legs or tears and talk about like the quality of the wine. Like this must be such a good wine. Like look at those beautiful legs. Legs or tears, like I said, it has everything to do with the viscosity and it has nothing to do with the quality of the wine. So don't be that asshole in the restaurant that's always like, ooh, look at these beautiful legs. It must be good wine. You sound like an idiot. So don't do that. So anyways, I'll get off of my soapbox of the legs or tears. We don't talk about legs or tears because it's stupid. But besides that, deposits. Pétillance, bubbles. Do you see any bubble? Do you have any deposits in your glass? Anything like that? Make a note. But I don't see anything in my glass. It's very clear, very bright, star bright, very translucent. All right, let's get to the notes. Give it a little swirl to kind of unlock the aromatic compounds, and then dip your nose in it. And you can take a either long, kind of slow, big whiff, or you can take like a couple, 2 to 3 short ones. See if which one is better for you. I tend to be the kind of a long and slow one, but you decide. All right. So 1, is this wine clean or unclean? I'll say this wine is very clean. This wine is very sound. If the wine was faulty, so unclean means there's some. So in wine, there's many other things that happen here. It's not just the fruit and flowers, but there's also like volatile acidity. There's many different things that are happening, chemically speaking. And some of those things can come off a little unclean, like sulfites. If the wine was made in a very reductive setting, the wine can come off kind of like match head, onion skin, like farty, like hard-boiled eggs, things like that. This just means the wine needs to breathe more. Like once it gets exposed to oxygen, it will blow off. Here, I don't see any of that. Like this doesn't smell reductive. It just smells very clean, smells very sound. But is it faulty? So the most common fault is cork. You might have heard that. This wine is corked. It comes from basically dirty cork. When the cork is not fully sterilized, and when it's been the wine's been tainted by cork taint, it gives off these kind of like wet cardboard, damp basement floor kind of smell, and all the other smells, fruit, flowers, all the aromas will be way just kind of muted. So when you smell it, and once you smell corked wine, you'll know exactly what it is. It's like a matrix moment. Once you smell corked wine, like you can always spot it. But until then, if you didn't know what it was, you probably have consumed corked wine in the past. It's not bad for you. It's not going to harm you, but it's just not very good. It's just not very muted. It doesn't taste like much. So yeah, that's the most common fault. But there's a variety of the faults that can happen to the wine. A lot of it is also, and one day when we get to a wine that's kind of like flirting with a fault, I'll talk more about it. But fault to me is a very much of a tolerance and intentionality game, meaning did the winemaker intend this wine to be made in this style? It's also subjective kind of tolerance, how much of it exists. So things like VA, volatile acidity in very high amount, it can smell like nail polish. In low amount, it can have very nice little like balsamic vinegar kind of a hint to it. In some wine regions, any volatile acidity considered a fault. But in some wine regions, like a lot of Italian wines, particularly like Chianti, Brunello, like VA is almost kind of a hallmark telltale sign of that region. So it kind of all depends on where you go. It's very arbitrary. So we'll talk more about fault as it goes along. But for now, this wine smells exactly what it should smell like. It's clean. This wine is sound. Intensity. So give it a swirl and start moving the glass towards your nose. Notice when you start smelling the wine. Also, my nose is a little stuffed, so I may be a little off. But I smell it here. Also, Torrontes, very expressive, very aromatic wine. So I'm going to call this, so when you start smelling the wine, when the nose touches the rim or just off the rim, that's like medium. When it's a couple inches off the rim, it's like medium plus. Way up here is pronounced. And then if you like get your nose in the glass and you can't really smell it, that's like medium minus. And then light is like when there's really nothing coming off of it. So to me, this, even with my stuffed nose, I smell it like right here, which is, what is that? A couple inches. So I'm going to call this medium plus. Medium plus aromas of, this is where you go to the second page, and then you just name out things that you smell. And by the way, don't spend huge amount of time here. It's basically kind of look through it, go down the list, look through it. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. Just don't try to sit there and be like, oh my God, is this honeysuckle? Is this chamomile? Oh, I can't figure it out. Like, don't worry about it. That's not this is honestly the least important part of tasting wine, if you ask me. The structure is way more important. It tells you so much more about what's going on with the wine. when you start tasting the structure and the aromas. But the actually, calling out the right fruit is the least important part of it. So anyways, let's go down. So floral. Do you smell any flower? I do. I smell a little like white flowers, some sort of like a blossomy honeysuckle even. Yeah, it's like a white flower, blossom, honeysuckle, all that. Do you smell like green fruit? Yeah, I think that smells a little green fruit. Eh, maybe a tinge, not huge. There's some other ones that give up a lot more green fruit, but maybe a little bit of this like gooseberry, maybe a little bit of this quince. I know we've talked about this fruit so many times, like what the fuck is quince? But yeah, it's kind of like if apple and pear had an illegitimate child, it's a lot more aromatic, it's like a lot more flamboyant. That's kind of like what quince would be. But anyways, if you get a chance to smell quince. But yeah, I get a little bit of quince, kind of a gooseberry kind of a thing. Citrus, definitely. I get some lemon peel, I get some lime peel, like orange even. Like there's quite a bit of citrus here. Yeah, so quite a bit of like citrus running through. Stone fruit, yeah. I guess some like maybe peach. Fresh peach has like almost like a peach ring, kind of like a, you know, candied peach kind of a deal. Uh, Not much tropical fruit. Maybe you can, convince me there's some passion fruit on that, but mostly I'm in the kind of stone fruit citrus world. No red fruit, no black fruit. This is usually for red wine anyway. Um, and then dry cooked fruit, the nature of the fruit. This tells you a lot when the wine is really like jammy and cooked and big. It basically tells you that either the place where it comes from is really hot, or it's possible that the wine was stored wrong. But in this case, what I smell is very fresh, very ripe. There's touch of like the fruit itself is not underripe. There's touch of like a green, which is what we're gonna get into here. A little herbaceous herbal, but this also like to me gooseberry and passion fruit always has like a little bit of that kind of a green edge to it. So to me, it's more of that than it is an underripe fruit. So yeah, some sort of like kind of a herbaceous green, gooseberry-y, passion fruity-y, kind of like touch of green, which is really nice. Like on top of all this flower, fruit, and the ripeness, there's a touch of that kind of savory green. Yeah. Um, Good. No spices here for me. And then no stones here. And oftentimes, this is one thing, if somebody were to probably talk shit about Salta, is that you don't get a whole lot of like a rocky kind of a nature thing when the grapes are grown on sandy soil. Sandy soil grapes and wines have a very specific kind of like almost like not effervescent, but like a ethereal, really like high tone kind of a thing going on, but it's not rocky. And in case this is your first time hearing this word minerality, a lot of winos talk about this word quite a bit. Uh, Nobody really understands the science behind how the wine comes to kind of display these kind of rocky mineral character, but we all know that wines grown in different soils actually display different characters, and some of them actually have these kind of like a rocky, minerally kind of a thing going on, and that's kind of what we mean by this other minerality. But in this wine, I don't particularly get much of that. To me, this is like very primary first thing. Also, just so you know, this is what it means. Primary is all the aromas and flavors that come from the fruit itself or the fermentation. Secondary is the aromas and flavors that come from the kind of treatment of the wine after it's been fermented. So like, let's say you put it in barrel, new oak barrel, or you put it through MLF, which is a malolactic fermentation, which is malic acid that exists in the wine, converting to lactic acid. This is a natural thing. If you leave the wine alone in like a room temperature, you will just do this. Secondary fermentation will happen on its own. Think malic acid as like a green apple, really sharp, jagged acid. Lactic acid, think like lactose, think yogurt, sour cream, still tart, but much rounder. So it's like a different shape. They're both tart still, but it's just different shape. So that You can choose, as a winemaker, you can choose to put it through 100% malolactic, no malolactic, partial malolactic. So yeah, that's a treatment after the initial fermentation, or the yeast leaving the wines sitting on the lees. This is where you get these kind of biscuity, bready, doughy, kind of savory element. So these are all secondary. And then finally, tertiary is what happens when you age the wine. So when it's particularly bottle aging, but it can be tank aging as well, or barrel aging. When the wine's been aged, a lot of that kind of primary aromas and flavors that we got in the youthful young wines will start to turn into non-fruit or dried fruit. So you get things like dried apricot, marmalade, dried apple. You get here, you bottle age red. You get things like mushroom, game, tobacco, wet leaves, things like that. Raisins, figs, all right, let's get back up here. I don't get much secondary here. Again, this wine is a very kind of simple in terms of winemaking, right? Destemmed, pressed, off the skins, fermented, and then not much aging after all, and just bottled and kind of pushed out. So it's very youthful, very young. This is meant to be, like a lot of Torrontes, meant to be a very much primary driven, youthful, young wine. No tertiary whatsoever here, because it hasn't seen any aging. All right, let's get back up there. Why is my computer being so slow? All right, let's get to the palate. So now we finally get to taste it. So take a little sip, move it around, Listerine the shit out of your mouth with the wine. Coat every inch of your mouth, because you're not only tasting for flavor, but you're tasting for structure. So you want to feel the wine. So move it all around, and then you can spit it, you can swallow it, do whatever you need to do. But we're going to start from the top and move down. Sweetness. We're talking about the presence of sugar here. Dry means lack of sugar. Sweet means presence of sugar. This is looking at the entire world of wine. Everything that's been made, all the way from, by the way, 90+% of wines that are made in the world are dry wines. So when in doubt, go with dry. But when we're talking about luscious, we're talking about like 650 grams per liter. Grams per liter is how we measure sugar in wine. 650 grams per liter, that's like, Tokai in Hungary. So we're looking at all the wines in the world. That's why wines like this, most wines are dry. We're talking about probably anywhere under like 10 grams per liter is what we're talking about. I know for a fact that this wine, Torrontes, I don't have the exact texture, the lab data on this vintage, but the past vintage, the last vintage was like 1.3 grams per liter of RS, residual sugar. So we're talking about like bone dry wine. Most humans can't detect sugar level below 5 grams per liter. So we're talking about wines, even though a lot of people will probably think that this wine is sweet just because it has so much aromatic compounds, it's so expressive, so much fruit, so much flour, but the actual sugar level is very, very low. So this one is dry. Acidity, move it around, see where you feel acid. For me, it's the back of my jaw. This is how much it pulls. You can also watch how much your mouth salivates. For some people, they feel it in their sinus. Some people feel it in different, between their eyebrows. Some people feel it in their sinuses. You got to figure out where your body feels acid. So let's feel acid. All right. So this wine, I don't know if I want to go all the way to medium plus. This is like lower end of medium plus, high end of medium for me. Just to make a distinction, I'll call it medium plus here. But yeah, it's somewhere in the middle here. It's definitely not low. And the difference is almost every Torrontes I've ever tasted in my career, in my life, has never gone beyond medium. It's never gone even close to the high end of medium. The fact that we're talking about lower end of medium plus, high end of medium, high end of medium plus, lower end of medium, high end of medium, low end of medium plus for Torrontes is shocking to me. And it's again, it's only because it comes from Cafayate, places that are very, very high in elevation. That's the only reason why things like that is possible. So I'm gonna call this about like, just help you calibrate your senses. This is like higher end of medium, lower end of medium plus, somewhere around there. Tannin, we don't have to talk about that with the white wine. This is the kind of the drying sensation. It's a chemical compound that's found in skin, stems, and seeds. If you ever want to experience what this feels like, if you take like a couple bags of green tea, oversteep it, and like suck on the green tea bag afterwards, or take a sip of the green tea and move it around, you will know exactly what it means. It's like that kind of drying sensation. It's like it provides friction, so yeah, but white wine, when it's taken off the skins, there's no tannin, so we're not going to talk about that here. We'll talk more about it when we get to red wine. Or if for orange wine, you can talk about tannins with the white wine, but this week we don't have orange wine. Alcohol. So take a sip, move it around, or take a flow, and then observe the warmth that you feel in the back of your throat, and then try to calibrate your senses. So get in the habit of playing this game where you kind of guess the alcohol percentage each time you taste wine. And just to help you, so medium is like 12 to 13 and a half. Medium plus is like 13 and a half to 14 and a half. High is like 15 and above. Medium minus is like, I don't know, 10 and a half to 11 and a half. And then low is a 10 and below. It's basically essentially roughly what it comes out to. There's no exact kind of cutoff line because a lot of this is also a perception as well. I've had, 16% alcohol wines that does not drink like 16% alcohol because there's so much other things going on that balance it out. I've also tasted like 11, 12% alcohol wines that drink so hot, meaning so much alcohol is present there. It's because there's nothing else to kind of back up the alcohol. But in general, we're talking about the amount of alcohol that's in the wine. So to me, this feels about medium, like right down the middle, like 12 and a half, maybe 13, 12 and a half. Yeah. So this is like a medium, right in the smack dab in the middle of medium. Body, this is where I'm going to split the room. There's people who are on team milk or people who are not. So people think, I know some of you really do not like milk, so you may get turned off by it. But I think it's actually a really good analogy. So body is essentially viscosity, the weight of the wine. So take a sip of your wine, move it around your mouth, and don't pay attention to flavor. Don't pay attention to anything else except for just the weight, the viscosity of the wine. And then the analogy that I give is like, imagine if you're moving whole milk around your mouth. That'd be full, and then 2% would be medium. Light would be like skim milk or even water, and anything in between. So move it around and see where it is. There's some weight here, huh? It's not just all water. There's actually some weight. I'm gonna give this about 2% milk, maybe bordering on a 3%, but it's definitely medium here, which is surprising, right? Like the wines like this comes from a very high elevation, low, like medium, not high, moderate alcohol. You think that it would be pretty light in body, but no. Torrontes produces wines that has decent amount of body. So the obviously warmer places where this comes from, you're gonna get fuller body because there's gonna be more alcohol, more sugar development. But with this one, even then, even in a very cold place like Cafayate, we get medium. Mousse, we don't have to talk about that because this is not a sparkling wine. Flavor intensity. How intense are the flavors? I'm gonna call this a medium plus. It's not a shy wine. It's very expressive. Torrontes is rarely ever expressive. If anything, it is too expressive. I'm gonna call this a medium plus intense flavors of. And this is where you go and confirm everything that you smelled on the nose and to see if there's anything else that come to you while you're tasting it. And everything that I smelled, I am totally confirming it. There's definitely a floral touch here. There's some honeysuckle, there's some blossom, some white flowers. I do get some quince here, maybe less gooseberry on the palate than I did on the nose. I think though the reason I went to gooseberry and passion fruit, I think it's that kind of like a little bit of that the green kind of touch to it, with the flower thrown in. It's taking me there. But on the palate, I get Winston. I do get gooseberry. Again, also, if you may be wondering, like, what the fuck is gooseberry? I didn't know what gooseberry was until, 4 or 5 years ago. So don't feel bad. Go to farmer's market sometime and then taste gooseberries. Citrus fruit, definitely. Lemon, lime. I get some grapefruit peel here as well, particularly on the palate. There is on the nose. Some of that peach kind of a thing for sure. Uh, Not super tropical. Maybe a little passion fruit. Maybe. I won't. Yeah, I'm gonna call this lychee, but maybe passion fruit. But again, it's mostly quince, citrus, stone fruit, bunch of floral. No red fruit, no black fruit. Very fresh, very ripe. Touch of that green going on here. Um, no spices, no minerality here. No secondary, no tertiary. Again, very much primary driven wine. But one thing I will note on the palate that I did not get on the nose because you can't smell it is salinity. So maybe that's what it goes out to minerality here. Taste this, and there's a little bit of salty brininess here, which I think is really nice, especially with with all that fruit and flour, having that kind of savory greenness, savory brininess. I think it's really nice. Yeah, so some of that kind of a briny, salty kind of a thing going on top of all the wine. All right, finish. Finally, this is a length. Another word is length. How long do the flavors stick around? So take a sip and see how long flavors stick around in your mouth. It's going. There's a salty finish. I mean, it's still going. I'm gonna call this about like medium, high end of medium. Again, struggle to go all the way to medium plus, but definitely not short. I'm gonna call this medium on the current stage that it's in right now. Conclusion. This is where we're gonna put it all together and call this ageability. So quality level, uh, at least according to this grid, is defined by four things. So one is balance. Is this wine balanced in terms of, is there anything, so it's four things that define quality. It's balance, complexity, concentration, and depth. So balance, is there anything that is so overwhelming here that it interferes with your experience of experiencing other things? I'll say no. I think everything here is balanced, which is something I rarely say about Torrontes. I would say the aromatics, the floral character of Torrontes is usually way overwhelming, out of balance. But in this case, I feel totally. I don't think it's interrupting me. So balance, concentration. We called it medium plus on the nose, medium plus on the palate. So medium plus concentration, right? And then complexity, we call that quite a few things, right? We got a few different florals, we got some green fruit, we got some citrus fruit, we got some stone fruit, maybe a touch of tropical fruit. There's some salinity, maybe there's some herbaceous thing, but all in the primary world, right? Nothing in the secondary, nothing in the tertiary. This is very youthful, very primary driven wine. So I'd say this is like, I don't know, medium. Again, I feel like this wine, I'm like landing on this kind of like high end of medium, lower end of medium plus. I'm gonna call this like medium. So medium complexity, and then the length, again, we call this somewhere in the medium to medium plus, right in there. Depending on how generous you are, you can call it medium plus, or you can call this medium. So all across, we're right on balance, and the concentration, complexity, and lengthwise, all right in that high side of medium, lower, and the medium plus. So when all that average comes out to kind of medium, that's good. When all that average comes out to medium plus, is very good. When all that average comes out to pronounced high, that's outstanding. Acceptable when that average is medium minus. Poor is when that average is short, light, low, and then faulty is if there's something wrong with the wine. So knowing that this wine is somewhere between good and very good here, I struggle to go all the way to very good just because it's it's not super complex. It's meant to be a very youthful wine, but there's very much imbalance. So I'm going to call this good wine. But, it's somewhere in good and very good. But I'm going to call this good. Level of readiness for drinking, potential for aging. In order for wines to age, you basically need two components. There's a structural component, and then there's a flavor component. And each one of those components divides into two subcomponents. So structural component, which is what we're talking about, is acid and tannin. This is white wine, so we're not talking about acid. So let's talk about, I mean, we're not talking about tannin, but let's talk about acid. We have about, we call it about somewhere between that medium plus, right? Not quite medium plus yet. So not a hugely high acidity. There's no tannin here. Usually wines are meant to be aged for a long time. It either usually has very high acid and or high tannin. But this one doesn't really have either. It doesn't have any tannin, and it has a good amount of acidity, but not like a screaming acidity. So structurally already, essentially that structure kind of serves as the backbone where all these flavors attach to and then develop over time so the wine doesn't fall apart. While it develops from that primary to that kind of dry, tertiary kind of flavors, non-fruit flavors, the acid and tannin is what kind of keeps them all tight and make sure it doesn't fall apart. But the fact that this doesn't have any tannin, decent acidity, it doesn't make it for a huge candidate for long-term aging. And that's Torrontes is never meant to be aged. It's always meant to be usually, I haven't come across any Torrontes that's been aged and it's meant for more youthful kind of immediate consumption. But on the second part, the flavor component, we're talking about concentration and complexity. The reason why you would want to age the wines is one, either structurally it's just so inapproachable. Like if you ever come across young Nebbiolo or even young Sangiovese from Tuscany or young Nebbiolo from Piedmont, old school Nebbiolo like Barolo, it is so tannic that it's inapproachable in its youth. And then you gotta age it for like 10 years for the tannin to kind of like mellow out and fall out of the wine so you can approach it. It's approachable. So that's one reason. But flavor-wise, another reason is to add more complexity. So all these primary flavors will be turning into tertiary flavors while holding on to some of their primary. So now you have this like kind of fresh fruit as well as developed fruit. So adding more complexity to the wine. But in this case, the complexity is not all that high. Concentration was decent, again, medium to medium plus. It's not, well, we call the concentration medium plus. So it has decent concentration of flavors, but it doesn't have enough acid for it to age for a long time. Nor, honestly, I don't know if this will necessarily be more delicious with like dry fruit. To me, what's delicious about this wine is its freshness, its kind of youthful, freshness. So I would say don't age this. Drink this now. If you want to age it, you'll probably, or not necessarily age it, but if you want to drink it over next, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, probably perfectly fine. But yeah, it's not meant to be aged. Drink it now. Pop it open. Put it down the hatch, as they say. So that is how you go through the grid. All right. Thank you for sticking with me. First week is always a long one because, again, I have to explain all these things. So it usually doesn't run this long each week. But yeah, there you go. Any questions about anything that I just went over? Any disagreements about any of my calls? Any additional calls? Reading some comments. Whole Foods, just know what they taste like for the grid.
Say Jasmine was a flower that I got on this.
Yeah.
Call it, and it's like not a typical flower that we get, but when I don't know, I thought it was like that the glass was soapy. Like I didn't know wrong. So I went and I rinsed it and I came back and I'm like, no, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the wine. It's Torrontes. No, I totally agree. Jasmine is a great call. I should have called Jasmine, but yeah, there's definitely Jasmine here. To me, that like white flower is Jasmine. Is what I'm smelling for sure. Yeah, ton of Jasmine. Yeah, I mean it's just very floral. So imagine like this is already very like for like this is probably one of the most floral wines that we've featured in the Six Wine Club. Like I don't usually feature a lot of floral wines because I just personally don't like them all that much. Um, but like if this is already so soapy and too much for you, imagine like times 2 and 3 of this with no acid. Like that's what normal like Torrontes from Mendoza smells and tastes like. It's fucking gross. But not this one. I can drink this, especially with food. Like if you got some, oh yeah, let's talk about pairing. Did anybody?
Yeah, remind me what the pairing was. I looked, but I didn't.
So I call for like a really not necessarily
Asian
spicy,
food.
spicy would be fine, but yeah, Asian like spice food, so like a Thai or Indian curries, but particularly I think the coconut milk based kind of curries in Thai would be really delicious with this. I also thought like the ceviche with the coconut milk base with a lime and lemongrass, kind of like that like a Southeast Asian flavor profile ceviche. I thought would be delicious. So I don't know if anybody got a chance to pair this with any of that kind of genre. I would love to hear. Yeah, with the floral lines, the spice is the king. Like that's where you go.
So and I got a lot of Glade air freshener off this one.
Yeah.
Which is an improvement because at first it was pool water to dish soap to Glade air freshener. But after about 2 hours now, I kind of get it now. You know, it's just kind of pure germanium for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I never had this kind of wine before, but this I was pretty shocked.
Yeah,
but it's yeah, I get what you're saying. Like yeah, maybe like a coconut milk kind of thing that should be pretty good with.
Yeah, I mean, if this wine is
after like a
way
2 hours,
yeah, overwhelming, definitely makes more sense with food. I wholly agree. Like, I would rarely ever drink Torrontes on its own. Like, it's just too much.
But Joe's right. Like over time, like less cold, it's getting better. Like so, the more cold that it is, the more the work. I don't know what's that. The like.
Huh?
I'm like, did I just plug it in? Like, what?
So gross. I was like, what is happening here? Do these people not clean this thing? Yeah.
You put it in like an oil diffuser, just like put it on the top,
Yeah.
just let it evaporate.
You called potpourri earlier. I was like, it tastes like this is like,
yeah. Dude, I mean, if
grandma
you think this
plugs
is
in the potpourri candle.
Yeah, if you think this is potpourri, honestly, just for the sake of experiment, next time you're at like just any grocery store or just any like a wine store, and you see a bottle of Torrontes from like a central Argentina, from like Mendoza or San Juan, pick up a bottle and taste it. Like you will know exactly what I mean. Like if you think this is potpourri, it is fucking terrible.
Wow. Cool.
Like you probably want to like gift to your grandma and tell her to like put some behind her ears.
Yeah, close to that. Yeah.
Did anybody?
The people who drink and Coke.
Sorry, what's up, Dave?
Cocktail. The Argentinians love Fernet and Coke as a cocktail. So there you go. I mean,
what are you saying? Just
That is a good cocktail. They're right.
not at that quantity. It's not.
I like Fernet and I like Coke separately. I don't know about them together. That's where I have a part problem. Did anybody besides Joe not like this one?
I'm not a fan of
Okay.
Torrontes, but I will say this is probably the best one I've had. So I'll give you that.
Yeah,
I'm drinking it.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about this one. I had a Thai-ish salad and it worked well. Yeah, there you go. Pale with the goat cheese and manchego. Yep. There you go. Oh yeah, that's another one with cheese, like a hard aged cheese, like a salty cheese. Cool. Well, So for those of you who
Norris
did not
liked-
enjoy it,
Norris liked it, but I hated it. I also
Yeah.
got potpourri, Glade, air freshener. It just the nose is okay, but I can't do the.
yeah,
I'm very anti-floral to begin with. Like I don't like any air freshener kind of scent. So
Yeah.
no, it was
fair.
a hard no for me. But Norris liked it.
I loved it. And I don't really like a lot of whites, but
No.
Yeah.
it was delicious.
all right. Well, there you go. You know, everybody's a different palate. Again, this is not my thing, but my whole thing was if you enjoy floral wines and aromatic wines, I think this is actually made very well. I think it's very balanced. You know, like Shannon said, it's the best Torrontes I've ever had. Not that I'm a huge fan, but you know, just want to showcase that. All right, so let's play everybody's game. Favorite game. How much do you think this is in a retail shelf? How much would you be happy paying for this at a retail shelf? Oh, this is gonna get brutal. 59. Ah, that's hilarious. $3. All right, Joe. 2020, 15, 9, 2028, 28, 10, 23, 28, 25, 13, 25, 20. All right. Well, you guys all think this is
This is the first time, Un, you cannot say you guys are good at this.
Yeah, this is kind of all over.
I know you always try to say that, but it's not. We can't. We
This
can't
time it's
pretend.
not. This time you'll suck. So Torrontes is rarely ever. I don't think I've ever seen Torrontes retail price beyond 25 ever. So it's never an like expensive wine. Anyways, this one in a retail shop would be $16. So to give you an idea, I mean, like for $16, I would say this is banging. Like it's a great. Again, if you like this style of wine. If you don't like the style of wine, I totally get it. Like, why would you pay any money for it? But if you like this style of wine and paired well with the right kind of dish, for $16, I think this totally makes sense. I'd be happy paying for it.
I love the wine, and I'm delighted to hear that it's $16. My concern, though, is that to me, it's just delicious, and I'm surprised that so many people hate it. Like, it doesn't taste controversial to me.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, well, if I buy a bunch, will any of my friends drink it with me? Is that even a problem? I don't know.
You can
But
just be for you,
That is
Allison.
not a
That's
problem.
fine.
You
You're
don't
You're
just-
allowed to have your own stash. Come on.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I was just like, oh, I'll buy a bunch because it's so cheap and delicious, but not if like 80% of people are gonna dislike it.
I know you all have like your own stash for friends when they come over. Like, oh yeah, here's the Robert.
Yeah.
Bobby. There you go.
Yeah,
Exactly. And you also get to expose them to new wines. you
it's
know?
true.
So there you go.
It's true.
Conversation starter. Did anybody love this one besides Allison?
I loved it. Oh, you
Okay.
already got me. Sorry. I think Whitney said they liked it.
Okay.
I've transitioned from not liking it to liking it more, but that could be sobriety talking. I don't know.
And Dave, you are a aromatic wine person too.
I am, yes. I mean, I do think it's a food wine,
Yeah.
no doubt. And
Yeah.
I think because I had the peppers on my palate, it works better.
Yeah.
But that rose water / geranium /
Yeah.
I think it's in the same category for most of the people. I could
Yeah.
see for some people it'd be quite irritating, but I don't
Yeah.
mind it. I mean, I'm done. I mean,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I even had more than 2 sips of this wine says a lot. Because I hate Torrontes. Have I said that? How many
You
times?
have, Un,
Yeah.
which probably should have tipped me off that I would like it because I feel like you and I have opposite palates, except for when it
Amazing
comes
that
to
you stuck around
champagne.
for so long, Allison. It's amazing.
I know. I have
That's not true.
changed. Un
You
has
and I don't
changed
have
me.
opposite powers.
Not opposite, no, and I've also shifted.
Yeah. Very true. All right. Any other questions?
You can't say it wasn't educational. So
Yeah. There you go.
Now everyone
That's
knows
all.
what do you call it? Toronto. How do you pronounce it? Toronte?
Torrontes? Yeah.
Torrontes.
Torrontes? Yeah.
So here's my question: what do the Argentinians eat with this, given how it's such a meat-heavy diet there?
Yeah, I mean, but they also eat a lot of cheese. So yeah, any kind of like a cheese pizza situation will probably be okay. The empanadas will probably be okay. I also see them just drinking this as like when I lived there, this was like a aperitif. People are just kind of drinking it mixed with soda water, the siphon that they do.
Fernet.
So. What's it?
Or Fernet.
Or Fernet, yeah. Yeah, so it's usually just kind of like a spritzer, essentially. Torrontes spritzer was how I saw them.
Soda water is interesting. Yeah, that's a kind of a. You could see that being like a nice little like mixer right there. Just get a little sparkle and.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw a lot of people drinking Torrontes at dinner table as like a starter. They would get like a bottle of Torrontes and get a thing of sparkling water, just kind of mix it, sip on it while they start to order. All right. Any other questions? All right. Alex, Laura, are you guys still here?
Yeah, we're still here, or at least one of us is.
First of all, did you like this one?
I did. Alex liked it a lot. He was pleasantly surprised. It was fine for, I think it was surprising to me. I've never had anything quite this floral.
Yeah.
But Alex, big fan.
Well, I don't really like white wines, so this was, I don't know, I feel like they're typically really bitter to me. So this was not that, so I enjoyed it.
Cool. Well, it is here a tradition here at Six for Wine Club that we, all the rookies, all the new folks, you go on what's called hot seat. I mentioned this at the beginning, where it's just a silly thing that we play, where we get to know each other a little bit, and where we get to ask you a question. And of course, you don't have to answer any of them. Consent is very important here at Six for Wine Club. And in return, you get to ask any question you want back to the person who asked you that question. So we're going to go back and forth until we run out of the people on the screens. And yeah, that's what we do. Are you guys game? How do you guys feel about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Then before we start, I'm actually also going to turn